The drought is officially over. The Seattle Seahawks slaying the dragon that is the San Francisco 49ers with a 20-17 victory at Levi Stadium. We're going to be breaking it all down here on our latest post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, 12s? This is Corbin Smith, the host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be teaming up for our weekly post-game show with my co-host Connor Benintendi, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in here late in the evening, live from Levi Stadium. The Seahawks getting a massive victory over the San Francisco 49ers. We're going to be taking a deep dive into every angle possible here on today's show, and a victory that has been a long time coming. This post-game show brought your way by our friends over at FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The Seattle Seahawks are back to 500, but most importantly, while they snapped a 2-game losing streak this season, they also snapped a 6-game losing streak to the much-hated NFC West rivals, San Francisco 49ers. It was a game, Connor, that went much different than most of these past 6 games that the Seahawks have lost the 49ers. Some of those games have been blowouts for a good chunk of the game, but this was a defensive slugfest. Both teams struggled to move the ball in the first half. The Seahawks shot themselves in the foot a few times. The 49ers shot themselves in the foot a few times. It was one of those old-fashioned NFC West slob knockers, as they like to call them. And at the end of the day, the big storyline here, Geno Smith, I know that and I'll play the clip here in a second, I know that he is not necessarily viewing this as any different than any other game. At least that's what he said in his post-game press conference. But Connor, we got to see him chuck a football into the tunnel after he scored the game-winning rushing touchdown with emphatic enthusiasm. There is no way that this game was just another game for Geno Smith finally beating the San Francisco 49ers.
Absolutely not. Not when Geno Smith was 0-5 coming into this game in his Seahawks career. It's one of the things that has been constantly a knock on Geno Smith as Seattle starter, right? He hasn't beat the 49ers. He hasn't had that hallmark win. And I know his performance was up and down today. It wasn't the best game, even close to the best game we've seen out of Geno Smith, but he came through when it mattered. And Corbin, the funny thing is I was sitting there after that, again, the Zach Charbonnet 4th-and-1 run that they got stuffed on. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, are we really going to have to talk about 2 weeks in a row the fact that the Seahawks can't pick up 1 yard on 2 tries, and that's what has led to these losses? And no, that's not the way that this panned out. Instead, Geno Smith, after his interception, Corbin, we're going to obviously dive more into Geno, but after his interception, 14 for 16, 123 yards through the air, 2 rushes, 29 yards, and a touchdown on that game-winning drive. Just an incredible final way to close out the game, really, for Geno Smith in Seattle through and through. And you touched on it a little bit there, Corbin. It was a much different game than what we've seen between the 49ers and Seahawks in recent years. In the 6 games that Seattle lost, 6 straight games that Seattle lost to San Francisco since December 5th, 2021, the Niners averaged 30.7 points per game in those games over the Seahawks. And the Seahawks have not held a Kyle Shanahan offense to under 20 points since week 13 of 2018. This was really reminiscent of those games that Seattle was winning back during the heydays of competing for Super Bowls and then the few years after it. It really kind of felt like a vintage win for the Seahawks. And I think that says a lot about the way that Mike McDonald's trying to build this team.
Yeah, it really does. And you mentioned the yardage. They held the 49ers under 300 total yards today. That by itself is incredible. Christian McCaffrey had 79 rushing yards. That is the lowest total he has ever had, including when he was with the Panthers, in a game against the Seattle Seahawks. So the run defense was much improved, second straight game that we can say that. The pass rush was still inconsistent, but they did just enough to get after Brock Purdy. And they only gave up 1 reception of more than 14 yards in this game. That was the stat that really jumped out to me afterwards. They weren't giving up the explosives in the passing game either. Were there some frustrating plays that picked up 3rd and 11s, 3rd and 12s. Yeah, there were a handful of those, but really this defense did a phenomenal job of making sure that they stopped the run, and then after that, making sure that they were able to limit those explosive plays in the passing game. So if they can eliminate those two things like you saw today, you can hold down an offense like San Francisco's. You can hold them to 17 points. But real quick, before we continue the analysis here, I do want, as I mentioned in this clip, I had a chance to ask Geno Smith about what this game felt to him, and we'll be able to go off of this and really what this means for the Seahawks moving forward. But I thought that this was a pretty exciting response from him, even if he didn't necessarily agree with some of my terminology for what this game stacked up compared to others, winning and finally beating the 49ers. Take a listen.
Gino, I know it's just one. It's one game. It's one opponent. But what does it mean for you to finally get that monkey off your back to be able to beat the 49ers today?
Shoot, like you just said, it's just one game. I said it, earlier in the week that division games are always going to feel like this. These are the most important games of your season. I think the way that we came out, we fought, collectively as a unit, as a team. It just spoke to, our urgency. And I thought the way that we practiced all week, I knew we were going to come out and play well. Monkey off my back, I didn't feel it at all. There is no monkey on my back. I was telling Lockett, I was telling Tyler in the locker room, I was like, man, we already won. You know what I'm saying? No matter what happens in this life, in this game, man, like, we're blessed. And so, I know narratives kind of shape a lot of this, but the reality is that, we won one game today, division opponent, and now it's on to the next one.
Right. Really, Geno Smith answered that, Connor, the way that he handled that game-winning drive, with poise, with confidence, and unflappability. That is really what we saw there. I mean, that interception early in the third quarter, again, the resiliency, that's always what people talk about with Geno Smith. But I think it really speaks to the team and how he rubs off in the team, because the defense for the Seahawks, they gave up the touchdown that allowed the 49ers to take the lead. It was a 70-yard drive midway through the fourth quarter, and they gave up 3 really long third down conversions on that drive. It felt like the game was slipping away there, and yet the defense came back. Usually when the 49ers are in 4-minute offense, it's game over. They're usually able to churn out the clock, get a couple first downs, and win the game. But the Seahawks defense was resilient. They bounced back after that rough drive. They get the punt. They force it. Seahawks get the football back, and then Geno Smith works his magic, going 7 for 8 for 54 yards. He has a couple of awesome scrambles, a 16-yarder on 2nd and 13 after he was sacked. That literally was the next play. And then, of course, the 13-yard touchdown where he sprints to the pylon, beats a couple defenders there to the corner of the end zone, and it's game over. So I think that it speaks to how his calmness, his poise, his resiliency really rubs off in this entire team. And we've seen it at times this year, but it just hasn't led to wins late in games. That changed today, and I really think that this can be a season-saving victory just because of who you beat and what it has been like the last 3 years trying to deal with these matchups with the 49ers.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought it up, Corbin, because I was going back and looking through some ESPN analytics as well throughout the game, and whenever Zach Charbonnet couldn't pick up that first down, and then they turned it back over to San Francisco, and then there was the penalty on Jonathan Hankins on that first down that moved the 49ers just across midfield. At that point, San Francisco had a 90.3% chance to win the game per ESPN analytics, which is usually, I mean, we've seen crazier things in football, Corbin, but it's one of those things that you look at, and the Seahawks' chances to win that game were very slim, and that's a testament to the defense. I think we saw this defense play its most complete game, maybe of the season, and that's after an overhaul of the linebacker room. You're moving things around in the secondary. I mean, you still have what potentially is a backup safety in Kobe Bryant, who maybe is not going to be a backup safety whenever Rayshon Jenkins comes back. It is really about the team effort. But on Geno specifically, man, you could just tell the way whenever he got into that end zone, the way he threw that ball in the stands, he knew exactly what had happened. He knew exactly that he had, like you said, the monkey off his back. He had his first win against the 49ers, and it's something that fans and probably Geno himself has been clamoring to get, especially on the road. I mean, it's the trends with the home and the away this year are so weird, Corbin, and we're going to obviously have a lot more games to be looking at this, but 3-1 on the road, and then what is it, 2-4 now at home. To go get this one, at Levi Stadium, man. You can't be happier for Geno and what he was able to do today, especially after that bad interception, maybe his worst interception of the season, Corbin. Just a bad throw, bad decision. But again, like I said before, coming back, 14 for 16, 123 yards through the air. I mean, he was nearly perfect. 4 passes to Jackson Smith and Jigba, who also, we're going to get to it, but JSN with another huge day. There's just not much more you can say about the way that game finished in the favor of Seattle. That it was all positive, Corbin.
Yeah, and what's really the best part about this, getting this win, not only did you finally get that victory over the 49ers, but don't look now, but you're half a game behind the Arizona Cardinals for first place in the NFC West. And guess who's coming to Lumen Field next Sunday? The Arizona Cardinals. You're battling for first place in the division. So this could be, again, you have to be able to capitalize it. And it's like Geno Smith said after the game today, that we're going to turn this into what we make of it. You know, this is their situation. They now control their destiny again, because this is a division where nobody's been able to really pull away. And you've got those 2 games left with the Arizona Cardinals. You still got a rematch with the Rams, who look vulnerable. You could have beat them the first time that you faced them. So really everything is still in line for the Seahawks to win this division. And I think that's going to be the best chance to get to the playoffs, because nobody in this division is really stacking up with some of those other divisions that have multiple winning teams. That doesn't mean they couldn't be a wild card if they got in a roll, but being able to hang in the NFC West is going to be how they are going to get to the postseason most likely. And a win like this makes you start to think again, maybe they can get on a roll if the defense is playing like that. You know, the offense is going to be able to put more points on the board than what they did. And the 49ers still have a good defense. So you look at it, it is the type of win they absolutely needed. And the fact that Mike McDonald got that win with some of the turmoil that they had this week, I think it really helps with continuing to win over that locker room, that, hey, the decisions we're making are going to help this team win football games. Up next, we are going to dish out our weekly game balls, offense, defense, special teams. We'll get to them up next here on our post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. This post-game episode of Locked On Seahawks is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets in the NFL all in one place. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. They've got live play-by-play and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you can bet on everything from Jackson Smith and Jigba scoring a touchdown next week against the Cardinals to Noah Fant returning from an injury and being the first player with a 30-plus yard reception. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Welcome back to the post-game show here, Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined for today's show by my co-host Connor Benintendi, and a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, whether you're listening in nearby Bellevue, Washington, or if you are down here in San Jose, California. We really appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in to our latest post-game installment. The Seahawks finally get a win over the 49ers. It felt like it had been a decade since the last time the Seahawks beat the San Francisco 49ers. They go to Levi Stadium and pull off the comeback win, a 20-17 victory fueled by Geno Smith's latest clutch efforts. And look, I'm just going to lean into your player of the game, your game ball winner on offense. I'm going to lean into it, Connor, because look, Geno Smith did not have the best statistical game he's ever had. He didn't have a passing touchdown. He threw a bad interception early in the third quarter. But look, this was his 7th game-winning drive orchestrated in the fourth quarter overtime since it started 2023. He and Jalen Hurts have the most in the NFL. The clutch gene has always been there. It just hasn't transitioned to this rivalry matchup that finally changed today with Geno Smith getting the job done, not just with his arm, but with his legs.
Yeah, and it's kind of just this Geno Smith roller coaster that we've been on this entire season. You know, he leads the NFL in interceptions with 11. He hasn't been particularly efficient putting the ball in the end zone with his arm, only 11 touchdown passes as well. And again, like you said, Corbin, it wasn't his best day, but the fact that this team was able to hang around and he was able to find that running lane and just take advantage of it. And those were available for a lot of the game, Corbin. It's just, you could see that his confidence was starting to build again as he saw completion after completion after completion. And then he started to find those lanes and he was able to take advantage of it there in the final drive. And it's not like we haven't already talked enough about Geno on this, but he just has to get the game ball purely because, like you said, the monkey is off his back. He's now 1-5 versus the San Francisco 49ers, which that's what fans want to see. They want to see wins versus the 49ers, so you got to give the man his props.
Yeah, he really played a fine football game away from the interception. He completed almost 80% of his throws in this contest, and he was great down the stretch. I think Ryan Grubb did a really good job helping him. The run game wasn't necessarily there, but it was better than it has been, and the screen game kind of functioned as an extension of the run, and it got that offense going in the second half. As far as my player of the game, second straight week that I'm going to be going in this direction. Jackson Smith-Njigba is becoming a star right in front of our eyes, and what I love most about JSN is how he always seems to show up when the game is on the line. Last year, he was one of the first rookies. I think it was the first rookie since like 1970 something to have 2 game-winning touchdown catches inside a minute to play. He did that last year. We saw him step up in that Rams game, come up with some big plays. He had the game-tying touchdown. And then in this game, he gets 4 receptions on that game-winning drive from Geno Smith. 4 of his 7 completions were to Jackson Smith-Njigba. It's the second straight game he gets over 100 yards. He gets 10 receptions on 11 targets. You want to talk about efficiency. I know he didn't get into the end zone, but the Seattle Seahawks don't get into the end zone today without Jackson Smith-Njigba's efforts, his ability to chew up the middle of the field, the short passing game, create after the catch on that tunnel screen that set up Ken Walker III's touchdown midway through the third quarter. JSN is playing really good football, and the chemistry he's got with Geno Smith just continues to get better week in and week out. So I'm really excited about what Jackson Smith-Njigba is doing for this offense, and I think he's got a chance now to really ascend into being one of the best receivers in the NFL. He certainly already is in the discussion to one of the best slot targets out there with the damage that he is doing week in and week out for the Seahawks. Let's go to the defensive side of the football. Hey, you hold the 49ers 17 points. There's plenty of candidates for this one. Who gets your game ball this week and why?
It's got to be Devin Witherspoon for me this week, Corbin, and that's purely it's partially because we haven't been able to give Devin Witherspoon much love this year just because none of his numbers haven't necessarily popped off the page, and we haven't felt him as much as we did last season. You felt him in this game, Corbin. You felt him on almost every defensive play. He was flying to the football. It's what they talked about during the week and what they talked about post-game, just all 11 rallying to the football. Devin Witherspoon embodied that today. Obviously, he had the 8 tackles, but then he had 3 pass deflections all season, Corbin, and he had 3 in today's game. It was just a huge level up from Devin Witherspoon. He obviously had the big, and that was a tough one that he got and tipped to Jonathan Hankins. That was an impressive pass deflection. So that obviously creates the interception. Would have been a really, really advantageous situation there had they been able to go down and get points. But just loved what I saw from Devin Witherspoon. It's nice to see him kind of break out again. And I know he talked about it after the game, Corbin. You know, he's not worried about stats. He's letting the plays come to him. And I think that there's merit to what Devin Witherspoon said there, Corbin. Especially in a game like this, you know he's going to have a little bit of extra fire. He's already starting to hate the Niners a little bit from his 2 seasons in Seattle, and you saw that today.
Yeah, he's starting to understand the history of the rivalry, and they're starting to try to figure out how they can get it back to where it was, where when these two teams get together, it is a slugfest. And that's what we saw today, even with some players being out for both teams. But my defensive game ball is, look, this is going to become a theme here. I keep picking the same guys week in and week out, but look, Ernest Jones is a game changer. He has been phenomenal in the last couple games for the Seahawks. And we talked about this off air earlier this week that Jones had a history of playing well against the 49ers when he was with the Rams. He carried that over to today's game, 13 tackles. And this is the stat that is amazing. 6 of those tackles, Connor, went for 2 or fewer yards in this game. And it could have been 7 if not for one that was called back with a penalty late in the game on Jonathan Hankins. He stuffed McCaffrey the line of scrimmage on that play. The dude just gets downhill like his pants are on fire. He has incredible instincts. And I don't know what it is. Like, the guy's not a big linebacker by any means, but he's a brick wall. If you hit him, you're going down. He does not get plowed. He does not go backwards. Like, you are going down. And I just love the way this kid plays the linebacker position. He had a couple really nice blitzes in this game as well. He has lived up to the hype. I mean, we were both super excited about him coming in, but he is a game changer for this defense. Their run defense, there's a reason it's gotten better. It is number 13. He is at the center of that right now. And on special teams, You and I normally pick two different players, but the more I thought about it, I was like, look, Patrick O'Connell had a couple nice tackles, but Jason Myers, the Seahawks don't win this game without Jason Myers in the first half with some of the miscues that the Seahawks had that ended up turning promising possessions into field goals. He made a 52-yarder and a 57-yarder that just snuck over the crossbar, and that's why the Seahawks only trail by 1 at halftime. They don't win this game without Jason Myers salvaging a couple of those possessions that they had in the first half, and he continues to be money on those deep kicks.
Yeah, you said it. I mean, there's not much more to add to that, Corbin, but the thing is there was this offense early on looked like the offense we've been seeing at times throughout the season, right? Where they go 2 steps forward, 1 step back. They have a really, really strong start to these drives, and it looks like they're cooking, and then maybe a Geno Smith sack sets them back, a false start, whatever it might be, and then all of a sudden the drive stalls, right? Especially if they go second down and 9 and they try to run it, and then they're in a 3rd and long, it doesn't go anywhere. So anyways, the point is Jason Myers was able to step up. He's had a true leg this year, and I think we haven't necessarily talked about it enough at times, Corbin, just how good he's been this season. And again, if they don't have those 6 points, they're not winning this game.
When we come back, we are going to switch gears to our weekly stock watch. We've got 3 up, we've got 3 down from today's victory in Santa Clara. Don't go away. You're listening to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks. Welcome back to the post-game edition of Locked On Seahawks live from Levi Stadium. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, on our post-game show by my co-host, Connor Benintendi. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are tuning in, whether you're in the Pacific Northwest or you are listening overseas. The cool thing about these shows, we've got plenty of listeners that, look, it's late in the morning or it's middle of the night and you're still tuning in because you love your Seahawks. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in and listening to our weekly post-game show. The Seahawks getting the huge win over the San Francisco 49ers, 20-17 at Levi Stadium. Geno Smith, I know he doesn't like the term, but he got the monkey off his back. Finally gets that first win as a starter against the San Francisco 49ers. I hope he's not beating the Seattle Seahawks. It's happened a few times. But looking back at this game, we've talked game balls. There's plenty of other standouts that are worth referencing in this game, though. It's our weekly stock watch, 3 up, 3 down. Let's talk with the positives. And look, I'll admit it, when I saw the play in game, Connor, Timmy had a snap that I was like, oh no, Connor Williams inspired him. It looked like it was misfired. And I still think that it was a really tough snap for Geno Smith to handle, regardless of what Mike McDonald says. That thing came in there cooking like 105-mile-an-hour fastball. But you take that play out of the equation, Timmy, one of the QB sneaks that was successful for Geno Smith, he knocked a dude like 2 yards off the ball. And we have not seen that at the center position at all this year for the Seattle Seahawks. And I thought that the pass protection from the interior, Bradford got beat a few times, but Timmy, I thought, looked really good in his first start this season. And maybe that's an encouraging sign that you can have life after Connor Williams and it's going to be okay the rest of this season.
I think you could make a case that he was maybe better than Connor Williams in a couple areas, Corbin, both, again, like with that power off the ball and then both in pass protection on the interior. It was, and all of the play today aside from Olu, just talk about a situation that is so incredibly unusual for a team to go through. This was one of the weirdest weeks I've seen in Seahawks football, maybe, since I can remember, right? I mean, you have just a guy who up and retires, and, again, cheers to Connor Williams. I wish him the best in whatever's next for him, but just an odd situation to have a player up and retire. It's similar to, who is it, Vontae Davis, who retired mid-game. I mean, you have Connor Williams.
At least Connor Williams didn't do that. Like,
yeah,
could you imagine that?
Exactly. But, so it's a little bit less peculiar than that. But, at the same time, Connor Williams, he's not with the team anymore, and Olu has to step in and just fill a huge role for a position that was struggling, right? Especially the interior of the offensive line entirely. Just kudos to that guy for standing up today and playing a really solid game.
All right, let's go to the defense. I have been waiting all show to talk about this because I just love it when big guys make big plays, and whether that's a offensive lineman catching a touchdown pass or running a touchdown, we very rarely see that, or a pick six, picking off a screen, whatever happens. Jonathan Hankins today showing off that vertical after Devin Witherspoon's pass breakup in coverage. knocks the ball up in the air. And, I'm thinking of the press box, like, okay, who's going to run underneath this? Is this going to be Julian Love? Is it going to be Kobe Bryant? And, oh, goodness, it's number 97. And he went up there. Jonathan Hankins plucked that ball out of the air like he was going for a loaf of bread, man. He got up there, just that 10-inch vertical, man, it caught me off guard. He got some air with that 330-plus pound body and reels it in like he's a tight end. And all of us in the press box are like, did he hold it through the ground? And he did. It was a fantastic play. And he had a couple plays in the run game in the second half where he was able to create some push and allow the linebackers to be able to get to Christian McCaffrey for limited yardage. So not a perfect game necessarily for him. There were a few times he got knocked off the ball, but that interception alone, first one in his career, I hope they got that ball and they gave it to him afterwards, because that was a legendary interception for a nose tackle to make.
Yeah, Corbin doesn't just say that he likes seeing big dudes make play like that. You can hear it in his voice how excited he gets during plays like that. But no, the hands catch. I mean, the hands catch from the nose tackle going up and plucking that thing. I was like, man, I've never seen a nose tackle make a play like that. So for Hankins to do that, I mean, that was like a Vince Wilfork type interception, the way he rose up there and got that. I know Wilfork had one or two of those in his career, probably just one. But anyways.
He's the one I was referencing with one of those screenplays. It's like, look at that big fella rumble.
You got the big boy moving. No, it's awesome when you see that. And again, like you said too, Corbin, in run defense, he was solid today. There's just a couple of those plays that stand out where you see it and you can feel Jonathan Hankins. So super excited for him. He won 161 games before getting his first interception in his 162nd. So props to the big boy Hankins. Also on the defensive side of the ball, Corbin, we got Tyrese Knight stepping in. Another weird situation. It's the same with obviously Olu and Knight stepping in big spots. Obviously Olu in his second year, Tyrese Knight in his first season to just step in after Tyrell Dodson, the defensive leader in snaps, is waived. You got Ernest Jones taking over the green dot, and Tyrese Knight moving to the weak side linebacker. Comes in 10 tackles, one quarterback hit in this game, 4 solo tackles. Both him and Ernest Jones go over 10 tackles in this game.
Yep.
I mean, when you look at the difference between the linebacker play this week to week 9, I think it's night and day, Corbin. You didn't see them getting just completely out of their gaps. You didn't see them getting mauled by blocks. They seemed like they were always in place, especially for a lot of the runs up the middle with Christian McCaffrey. Really just excited from what we saw there. And that was the thing. It was going to be a gamble, right? Is this linebacker group going to be better moving forward? And I think today we saw that it's small sample size, but I think today we saw that it's going to be a bright spot moving forward.
Yeah, and if I wouldn't have picked Ernest Jones for my game ball, I would have given it to Tyrese Knight. That is how well he played. And look, this is what the issue was with Tyrell Dodson. And we've talked about this a little bit on the show earlier this week with Rob Rang and Nick Lee on here. But the issue that I think Mike McDonald reached a point where he just couldn't take it anymore was the inability to work off blocks or getting himself in a position where he was getting blocked. And what you saw today, Ernest Jones, I swear the guy's got eyeballs all over his helmet, because anytime a guy's coming up trying to block him, he has this knack for just avoiding or dispelling that block and keeping himself clean. You're seeing some of those traits in Tyrese Knight already as well. We always knew he has the ability to get a lot of tackles. I mean, 140 of them last year in his last year at UTEP. And the guy's got a nose for football, but part of that is his ability to avoid blocks and get himself into the gap. I thought his run fits were excellent for the most part today. He had that quarterback hit. You got to see some ability on blitzing as well. There was a play in coverage, Kyle Juszczyk, where he immediately stopped him 4 yards after a 4-yard gain, stopped him right on the sideline. So I thought that this was a great stepping stone for Tyrese Knight in a really impressive start for him against a team that, quite frankly, I was worried a little bit. I think a lot of people were worried. How's he going to handle going against this Kyle Shanahan offense? He acquitted himself quite well. He played really well in this football game. I was impressed with what I saw. Real quick, let's get to the 3 down. And when you beat the 49ers and you hadn't beaten them since 2021, you don't want to have too many negatives, but there were some players that had some rough games. And the first one that I'm going to highlight, and I will say this, Charles Cross came back and played much better in the second half. But first half, he was getting bullied. And there was one play in particular, Yetur Gross-Matos. I don't know if I've ever seen a tackle get bulldozed with a bull rush the way that he was there by Gross-Matos. Cross just landed on his backside, and Geno Smith, like half a second after the snap, he's getting smashed by Gross-Matos. you're just still seeing too many times where power is beating Charles Cross. He's not able to set that anchor. So I thought a lot of the offensive line played better this week. They need him to continue to improve, though, because he's got to be the centerpiece of that offensive line as a former top 10 pick.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And Cross has been somewhat up and down throughout this season. I think he's been more up than he's been down. But again, it is some of those pass protection situations, Corbin, where he's just getting blown back. And eventually he's going to have to work out of that if he really wants to be a future all-pro tackle or even Pro Bowl tackle. So defensively, though, Derek Hall, we talked about it before the show, Corbin, but on that 10-yard scamper for a touchdown by Brock Purdy, maybe a hold, maybe just a little bit of a grab that they let him go. But either way, Derek Hall collapsed just a little bit too far in, let Brock Purdy get out, and he didn't have any help. I think it was Jaron Reed who ended up having to pursue Brock Purdy to the edge. You don't necessarily want your 300-plus pound defensive tackle having to be the one to chase him out there. So you want Derek Hall to set a little bit of a better edge there. And then also just obviously I'm going to pass it off to you, but Ty Okada, just the pump fake from Purdy. Like they talked about on the TV broadcast too, Corbin, whenever you get pump faked, especially 3 yards past the line of scrimmage, don't leave your feet, man. Just don't leave your feet. Just put your hands up.
Yeah, that play was one that stuck out. And it's funny because in the press box, there were some that were debating whether or not he was past the line of scrimmage. It was like, he looked like he was multiple yards ahead of the line of scrimmage there. You can't be a safety bearing down on a quarterback. What's going to happen there if you leave your feet and he throws the ball anyway? What are you going to do with that? You just have to keep moving without leaving your feet. You have to keep moving there, and you got to be able to pursue, because that jump completely took him out of the play there. At least the chance to be able to get Brock Purdy down before he got to the line of scrimmage. And a couple other plays that he left out there. It seemed like he was having a hard time with his pursuit angles. Look, it's a big jump going practice squad to playing the San Francisco 49ers. Like, that is a huge jump. So don't want to put too much on the kid. This was really the most extensive action that he's had in the NFL, playing as a third safety now that Kayvon Wallace and Rayshawn Jenkins are both on injured reserve. But he and Derek Hall both left some plays in the field. I thought Hall had a couple times he had a sack lined up and he just wasn't able to finish. So he was able to get one sack in this game, but that one was really Brock Purdy tripping himself up on that play. So sometimes you get lucky and get gifted one, but felt like there were some plays that he left out there. But overall, everybody pitched in this effort to beat the 49ers. This was a team win, and it's certainly one that the Seahawks are going to be hoping to build off of when they continue their NFC West tour, going back home next week. Arizona Cardinals, first place on the line in the NFC West. As always, you can follow me on X and Blue Sky at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Connor at CJohn Benintendi, and make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast to make sure you don't miss a single episode. We'll be back tomorrow. We've got our Monday Musings Victory Edition. Rob Rang and I will be teaming up. Deeper dive, all 22. We'll be discussing what we saw from this big victory over the 49ers. Make sure that you are listening in. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday night, especially after that monumental win over the 49ers. Go Hawks.